This is Flex Seal, as seen on TV. Yeah, and I hope it's not too thin here already. This is gonna have a bunch of dirt inside of it, so it doesn't really matter. Woo! I need to get back to my roots. I need to get back into wood turning. And more importantly, I need to get back into segmented wood turning, because that is where my passion started for any sort of turning. In my last few videos, I definitely just kind of filmed them to film them, and I didn't film them because I was passionate about the way I was turning or what I was turning. I might have just filmed them to get them out there, to get them in front of you guys, and to just kind of keep my view count going here on YouTube. And that's not what it's about, at least for me. Don't get me wrong, I love the views, I love you guys, and I love interacting with you guys in the comments and stuff. And I think it's pretty easy to get trapped in this cycle of just putting out content for content's sake and not doing it because you're passionate about it. So with that said, we're gonna go back to our roots and get into some chaos style segmented turning. I love chaos segmenting. I don't know if it's an actual thing or if I made it up, but basically it's just where I take a bunch of my scrap wood or just any wood and you mix all the segments together and you come out with a piece that just looks sort of chaotic. There's no pattern to it, there's no nothing to it, it's just a cool, fun looking piece. Going back even further in my segmented history, we are either going to make a vase or a pot for some plants. A couple of my first turnings were vases and I absolutely loved making them. I think that they look so cool and you can have a ton of fun with them. So depending on what we come out with today, that's gonna determine what we're making. And no, I don't have any sort of a plan for this. It's just cut and make something. Usually before I get into cutting my segments for my rings, I then come up with an idea for what I want to make, whether it be a vase or a pot or a bowl, and then I go from there. That's how I enjoy doing it, so that's what I'm gonna do. Now that I've got all these separated, I need to pick what I want to be using in this disaster. Cherry for sure, not this. Osage orange, sure. Sure. Ash, and I've got so much walnut. So it's been a while since I actually made a vase or a pot, and to get inspired I'm turning to every favorite maker's place, Pinterest. It looks like a lot of what's trending is very minimalistic or almost industrial, I'd say. Very straight, square edges and stuff like that. I'm not seeing a lot of turned ones. I'm not really looking to copy any of these. I'm just trying to get inspired by a shape, which nothing. Okay, so Pinterest wasn't really giving me anything, so I just switched to Google and I looked up vase and pot shape and design. And again, it's all just kind of random. Maybe I just draw it. Okay, so after searching on the internet and not being inspired by anything, I just started doodling, and I came to the conclusion that I think I'm gonna do something like this. That could be really fun. I've never done anything like this. I want it more round, which is what I was trying to accomplish here, but I don't know. So we're gonna basically turn this shape closed and then sand it till it lays how I want at the angle, something like that. I think, I don't know, but I think that's what we're gonna go for. A pot like that. We might make 2. I don't know. With all the wood I have here, I could definitely probably make 2. I'm not planning on making them like huge, just small, you know, for little whatevers. Let's get turning. So when it comes time to get my pieces ready for segmenting, I have a pretty simple formula. All I do is cut all of my pieces to about 1.25 inches. Over the time that I've been segmenting, I've learned that that is a pretty safe thickness for your segments. If I cut it to 1 inch thick, that seemed a little too narrow, and then if I cut it over, it seemed like that was just too much. So I found that 1.25 inches gives you enough safety to play with when you're turning, but you don't really feel like you're wasting all that much material. Once I have all my pieces cut to 1.25 inches, the nice thing about chaos segmenting is that you don't have to have them in any specific order, and you can get straight into cutting. I'm gonna be doing 16 segments per ring, and of course, I'm gonna be using my wedgie sled and my wedgies to get this done. A little bit of a selfless plug here, you can buy these kits pre-made by me from my Etsy if you are interested in getting into segmenting. I even have a video on my wedgie sled, how I make them and how they work here on my YouTube. So I'm going to be starting with a base of 6 inches, more or less. And to achieve that, I'm setting my distance gauge 1.25 inches away from the blade. I don't think these measurements need to be exact. As long as you're in the ballpark, you should be fine. Remember, this is a rough project right now. You're gonna be turning it down to a more beautiful and precise item. Once I get enough segments for the rings I want, I'm going to back my distance gauge up from the blade about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. That's going to make it so that my next ring is going to overlap about halfway on the base ring, and I'm gonna work my way up from there. Okay, that ought to do it. So one of the first things I always do when I am starting with my segmenting is I do test cuts. So I'll do the first ring. I won't go any further than that until I know that that is good. There's a lot of variables that can be going on in here that can mess up your rings. Your blade could not be 90. Your wedgie sled couldn't be set right. Your distance gauge could be moving like mine is. There's just a lot of different things that can affect your ring. So it's always good to, well, start and make sure everything is as good as possible, and then do your test cuts, see how it looks from there, and then move forward. One thing that would really help too is if I got a crosscut blade for my table saw, I would have way less of these frillies and stuff to clean up. Don't want anything impeding this ring, because if something's in there and you don't know about it, you'll think your ring is off when it's really just there's something in there. All right, 16 segments. This should give me roughly a 6-inch ring. Let's tighten this down, see how it actually looks. That looks pretty good. No huge gaps that are worrying me. but I'm gonna say it looks pretty good. 6.25-ish, but if you like, you know, average it out, 6-ish, close enough, good enough for me. So essentially I have one of my bases done. Obviously I don't want the whole thing to be walnut because this is a chaos style vase. So what I'm going to do is cut a couple pieces off of each of the other boards that I have, and then I can mix them all up and get our two bases done. So after looking at this, I've kind of decided that I think this is as big as I want the top of these things to be. I don't really want them to be any bigger, because if I go bigger with this, it's gonna be big. I want them to be small, where you can put succulents in it, or, you know, smaller plants. So we're actually gonna scale it down instead of scaling it up. I think that's the right call. All right, we've got all the rings done. We just did 3 because I think that's pretty decent. Plus we're gonna put a base on here. I did mess up a little bit from the second ring to the third ring. It's just a little smaller than I would have liked, but it should still work. I know it's kind of hard to tell with the clamps on there, but this is kind of what we're going for, and I think it's gonna look pretty good. So these aside, I want to do a segmented base for this, and let me walk you through the process of getting a segmented base based off of your last ring. Okay, so to save you guys a bit of a headache, if this is your last ring and you want to put a segmented base on there, you need to know the dimensions of your base, which this one is 4 3/4-ish, we'll say. And real simply, all you need is to divide that in half. So we'll go 4.75 divided by 2, and it's going to give me a number that I definitely am not going to like. 2.375, which is basically like 2 5/16 or something like that towards the center. So the reason that you need to know half of this is because you need pieces that are half of that, because you're cutting from basically here to the center of that. So 2 5/16 is that. Obviously we don't need it to be the full width of this, so we could just do it at 2 1/4. If we have a piece that's 2 1/4, that should get us right about there. So just think about it like this: if you have 2 pieces that are 2 1/4 inches, you put them together and that will form your base. 2 pieces together, right? But instead of 2 pieces of flat wood, we're going to use triangles that are each 2 1/4, and they'll come together and make a point. I hope that kind of makes sense. So now, back here at the table saw, we're going to cut all our pieces to 2 1/4 wide. And just to clarify, these were just extra pieces that I didn't cut into strips. Sorry if you cut up all of your lumber and now you don't have any wider strips. If you did that, like I did, I just took a couple of my strips and glued them back together. The beautiful part about segmenting is that everything is going to have lines and creases and glue lines, so it's not the biggest loss in the world if you're going to glue up a couple more pieces so you can get your segmented basin. So now for the really fun part, and by really fun I mean not fun at all, setting up your wedgie sled to cut the triangle segments for your base. There's got to be an easier way to do it. I just haven't come up with it yet or seen anybody come up with it yet, because basically you have to take your stock and cut it at a perfect triangle. So you want this piece to come to a point perfectly, basically. So basically I want this point to be the start, and it needs to come up at 16 degrees, however that's going to work. Now, because I have my wedgie sled already set up with 16, I don't need to worry about the angle. I just need to worry about dialing in my distance gauge, so that when I put the material against it, it's going to cut that perfectly triangular piece every time. So obviously I'm going to start by cutting my main piece to the angle I need it at. So now I need to put this up, and I need to calculate for the 1/8 inch difference of the blade to here. I don't know how to do that. So if anybody has any ideas, please put them down in the comments down below, and we can maybe figure this whole thing out together. All I do is I basically eyeball it and set my distance gauge and cut it and hope that it works, and if it doesn't, I make adjustments from there. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna set my gauge right at that point, right at this point. Really lock that down. Okay, let's cut and see how we do. That is super close. You can tell it's not quite there because there's a tiny flat spot right there, which I am not even mad about. The other thing obviously that would really help is if I had a nice sharp crosscut blade, but I don't, so I'm gonna get some tear out regardless. I think I cut off too much that time, but I think I actually nailed it. We're like at the perfect size there. So put it up against this as well, and it's like, it's dead on there. So I think we nailed it, guys. So I really quickly just cut 8 pieces. So that way I can test to see if they work halfway around. If they work halfway around, they're gonna work all the way around. And I just took a straight piece of wood and stacked these guys up, and they look pretty good. One of the problems that you're gonna run into basically with any of these, this little point right here, that's pretty typical, just because the points of these, they get cut off, they get blown out, whatever. And so a lot of segmenters, A, they don't even do these because of that. B, it's really hard to get these dialed in. And C, what they'll end up doing is they'll just glue up half of it, and then they'll glue up the other half of it, and then sand them flat, and then glue them together, which I think is what I'm gonna do once I get all of these cut. All right, I just got the rest of these cut, and now we can kind of put them all together and see really how we're looking, and then we'll get them all jumbled up and make some bases. Now, obviously it's not perfect. This thing is jutting out a lot. This one's in a lot, but the premise of it is pretty perfect. All right, we got all of our layers, 4 of them. This definitely came out a little more triangular than I was hoping, but I think I can make it work. I'm a little tempted to take off this 3rd layer and just do this, but if I do that, I'm not going to get as much roundability, is that a word, out of the piece. So I think we're going to do that and then do that. I would like it like this, but then it's a little too small. But we'll do all of them and we'll see how it goes. Glue up montage? I'm gonna let these rings sit and cure overnight. That is going to give them the strongest bond, and then we can continue on in the morning. Okay, new day, new problem, no, new day, here we go. So now that the glue has dried, all we need to do is sand these flat, and then we get to glue them up again. So the first thing I'm gonna be sanding is these bases that we split into two. I'm gonna be sanding them nice and flush where the seam was, so that way we can glue them up again nice and tight together. That way we can get them glued up, and hopefully by the time we're done sanding, that glue will be set enough that we can also sand these flat. And then we'll move on and sand one side of each ring. That's gonna give us a really nice base so that we can put it on the drum sander and sand all these down to equal thickness. This sanding disc setup is something I made myself. It's really easy to DIY it, but if you don't want to make it yourself, swing over to my Etsy. I have a whole set that you can purchase that will work on your lathe. It comes with an adjustable table and everything. This is by far one of my favorite parts of the process up until you start turning, and that is like when you're ready to glue everything up, because you can really see how awesome this is gonna look. I got these bases done. They look fantastic. Nice and smooth. They look awesome. Now, I'm gonna actually glue these up in two sections. We're gonna do 1 and 2, and then 1 and 2. The reason I do that instead of just gluing them all up at once is because I can ensure that they're all aligned well. Because the more glue you add and the more moving pieces you add, the more things are gonna slide around, and it's just not gonna be as symmetrical. So my gluing process is a little funny because I do it differently probably than most would do it. Obviously I still use glue. Make sure the glue is spread fairly evenly and make sure my joints match up, and apply some pressure. Applying the pressure is just gonna help that glue kind of stick and make sure both of the pieces stick well together. Then I come in with these little spring clamps, and I'll just put a couple on here to hold pressure on that for a second while I glue up the other part. So I'll actually add in these F-style clamps all around, and what that's gonna do is just give these joints really nice pressure all the way around. I'm not applying a ton of pressure to these right now. I'm just getting them on and locked in, so that way I can come in and add pressure when I have them all locked in. So now they're all locked in and I can really kind of clamp them down. Alright, so I took the privilege and just glued up the bowls. I didn't think you guys really needed to see that or cared to see that. So these things are now ready to turn. I'm sorry for the ambient humming noise. That's my shop heaters going on. We're having a big cold spell come in. It's supposed to get down to like -3 tonight or something like that. Currently, right now, it is 16 degrees, and it's going to get down, yeah, to -1. And it's already cold in my shop, so I've got to have these heaters going so I could even just be out here. I will do my best, of course, to edit my audio so it sounds good. But this is as good as it's gonna get for you guys. I'm definitely a tad bit worried with this shape. It doesn't give me a lot of wiggle room when it comes to rounding out this bowl. That's 100% my bad. I totally accept that. I'm gonna do the best I can with it, but if need be, we can always readjust and come up with a different design. I also hadn't put much thought into how I'm actually going to mount these to the lathe and turn them, but I'm kind of thinking if I get my jaws out and I use my coal jaws, I can reverse mount this and turn the outside. With segmented bowls, it's really great for coal jaws because they can grab onto multiple surfaces, and so it's actually pretty safe. It will allow me to turn the outside of the bowl, which will allow me to see kind of what the shape is going to look like, and if I need to make any changes in my design from there. All right, these coal jaws are holding this piece on really, really well. I'm not worried about it coming off at all. All right, I hope that's good enough, and I hope it's not too thin here already. It's sounding really thin. That's looking pretty good. The design, just the segments alone look insanely awesome. Yeah, we still have a decent amount of material down here at the bottom. I can feel it, so hopefully that works out. So I did take a quick second and put in this fun little detail here. I really like it. I think it just gives it that whole sort of flower pot feeling. I don't know why these little lips and dips make it feel like that, but to me, that's like a classic pot feeling. So I put that in there and I really like it. That's it. That's it. So now that the bowl is turned the way that I want it on the inside, I'm just gonna sand it really quick with 150 grit sandpaper, water pop it, sand it again with 150 grit, because I do plan on doing some sort of epoxy coating or some sort of coating on the inside of this, obviously to protect it. But I know there's going to be something on there, and so the finished quality of the inside doesn't really matter all that much, especially since we're just going to be throwing a bunch of dirt in there. Holy cow! This is a beautiful bowl. Oh my goodness. I mean, pot, I guess. I mean, whatever it is, it's freaking beautiful. There we go. Wow. Wow. I don't have any words for it. So now that it's done, more or less, I need to figure out the angle I want to sand it at. I don't want to go too much like this, because that's just going to be too much. Obviously, you're not going to be able to keep like a big plant in there or even a little one. I don't want to go too little, because then it might as well just be flat. So I'm thinking something like that. I'm just worried that I'm not gonna be able to sand it flat enough for it to be able to balance like this. Because that's a pretty big angle. But one of the main reasons I made two was so I could test it. So we will do one. If we can't get it to sit and balance well without going through the bottom, then we'll just leave the other one as a bowl. But hopefully we're not wasting here and we can make this work. So I'm basically just gonna I don't know, man. I'm nervous about this. I'm basically just gonna tap it to the sanding disc just a little bit, just enough to get it flat on one side, and then I'll test it against my lathe, and then we'll just go back and forth until I think I found something I like. This bowl is maybe half an inch thick, so I have a little bit of room to work with, but I don't want to push it too much. So as I'm sanding this, I'm trying my best to take my time because my biggest fear is sanding it all the way through the bowl and making a big hole in it. So I'm constantly pulling it off the sander, checking the thickness with my fingers just to make sure that that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, I did have a little accident and I did sand all the way through one of the bowls. It was my first one, my test one. After I did my second one, I really loved the angle of it, so I tried to change the angle of my first bowl just a little bit, and in doing that, I just sanded it too far. Not a huge deal. In order to fix the hole, I just super glued on some wood and sanded it down. You can still see through it, and it doesn't look the prettiest, but again, this is gonna have a bunch of dirt inside of it, so it doesn't really matter. So finishing these up, I weighed a couple options, epoxy being the first one, and it's too expensive, and I don't have the right epoxy for it anyways. The second was like a tung oil. It's great, but it would take multiple coats, and I honestly think it would break down over time. I then remembered that I used to finish the inside of my vases with this. This is Flex Seal, as seen on TV. Yeah, you guys remember this. If you remember seeing these ads on TV, leave me a comment down below. Let me know you remember. I used to finish a lot of my pots and vases with this stuff because it's liquid rubber, so it won't deteriorate and it's just gonna hold water really well. Because I want my pots to be usable. I want you to be able to put your plants in there, put your dirt in there, and water them and not be afraid that your wood and stuff is gonna erode. So here's what I did to get this thing prepped and ready to be sprayed by the finish. I simply just took a bunch of blue tape and taped over the top of it. Then I took a nice sharp X-Acto knife and cut out the interior of it. Now the blue tape should shield the rest of the pot from the spray, except for obviously where I want it to go. So let's get these things sprayed up and see how it goes. The edge looks really good where the tape blocked off the spray, and it should make finishing super easy. Alright guys, I am super excited with the way that these things came out. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, obviously the bowl turning and segmenting stuff, I know what I'm doing. It's just the little lip and making it lean that I had no idea if that was even gonna work. I think that the segment design is super cool. I think that the wood that I chose obviously is super cool. And all around the design is a win. If I were to change anything, it would be the angle of the bowl. I wish I could get it to stand up just a little bit taller. And now that I've made these, I think I need to make them deeper. And I would also like to make the opening of the bowl a little bit smaller. But this experiment has been super fun, and I've learned a lot about trying this style of pot. And the next ones I make are going to be even better. But let me know what you guys think. What would you do with these pots to make them better, or just to make them a little bit more your own? Again, if you've made it to the end of the video, guys, thank you so much for watching this thing all the way through. It really means a lot to me. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I would love to have you guys in this community. And that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching. Be good, be safe, be happy, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.